So let's talk about the possible termination of Kathleen Kennedy. This story came out a few days ago. It was first broken to my knowledge by Grace Randolph of Beyond the Trailer, excuse me, who is credible. She's a credible movie person. And the whole story was that there was some kind of a secret meeting or something with Bob Iger and the heads of Lucasfilm talking about Kathleen Kennedy possibly being fired. Or at least, fired is not the right word. We're going to get into that here in a minute. But I wanted to make this video because I made a video, a few weeks ago talking about how I do not believe Kathleen's going to get fired because Solo flopped and because Last Jedi got a bad response, it should not be enough to get rid of her. And I always thought that she had the whole, Force Awakens did well, Rogue One did well, Last Jedi made money. I always thought that was going to be her trump card, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where these executives don't just get fired like that. It doesn't happen like that. But there seems to be a lot of pressure coming down onto Disney from the Star Wars fandom, but really from more than that, from just the overall, I guess, geek culture and the fact that not only did Solo not perform well, but also the merchandise that they've been selling has not performed well. So now the question is about leadership and this supposed fan boycott and all this stuff. And so I want to address this, okay? First and foremost, you got to be careful with some of these clickbait websites. Here I have Screen Rant. Screen Rant says, Star Wars rumor, Disney struggling to replace Kathleen Kennedy. First of all, anything Screen Rant posts is probably bullshit. I mean, I've said this before on my other channel, Geekdom 101. They cover news extremely poorly. Very, very poorly. Lots of clickbait, lots of misinformation. So anything that's written on Screen Rant at this point from me, like when I see an article, I just write it off as being BS. Because you can't tell who's a good writer and who's not. And I'm not going to filter through every article and do the research. I'll just go to a credible website. Now, Express.co is a little bit more credible, but still kind of a similar website. And they're talking about, Disney firing Kathleen Kennedy for J.J. Abrams. Now, I have not heard that J.J. Abrams is going to be the replacement for Kennedy. I have not heard that. But I do think J.J. has a bit better finger on the pulse when it comes to, taking over for her as being the leader of Star Wars, as being the centerpiece, the executive producer of Lucasfilm. I think he might be better suited because even though Kennedy has more experience than him, JJ has worked with Spielberg, and Lucas in the past. He knows them. He's a fan of theirs. He respects them. There's that mutual respect. And he produced a pretty good Star Wars movie in Force Awakens. He has a good catalog of films. Mission Impossible 3 was a good movie. I like Super 8. He's got good movies, okay? That being said, Kathleen's never really been a director or a writer. That's not her gig. She's a producer. And I think it's good to have more of a creative person in charge who's not really an executive but has worked under that kind of corporate structure. He would be a better fit. Now, the thing about this story I want to talk about is that people are already saying, oh, she's going to get fired, she's going to get fired. Fired is not the right word to use here because when you fire somebody from a company, you don't just, make a phone call and then, wait a while and then fire them. A lot of times when you get fired from a company, only the top executives know, and if it gets out, things may change. So you got to believe that Kathleen Kennedy has been going to the internet and reading these articles. I mean, she has to know that it's coming, if it is coming. This is all rumors, okay? It's all rumors. And there's a lot of fake rumors out there that get spread through Hollywood. So it's one of those things where I don't think she's going to get fired, but I do think that if Bob Iger is serious about, because it says here that he ordered an emergency studio head crisis meeting. Yeah, I don't know about that, but it's one of those things where if she's going to get let go, it's not going to be in the way you think. She's still going to have a job with Disney, probably doing something else. She's probably going to stay on as a producer. I don't see her straight up getting canned from the entire company because she hasn't really done anything that's worthy of getting canned. No matter what, Force Awakens made money, Rogue One made money. She's been blamed for a lot of this because of her lack of communication and lack of understanding Star Wars fandom, but as far as her being worthless in the business, she's definitely not worthless. She's been, the producer for some of the greatest movies ever made. So you can't just get rid of her forever. And I know a lot of Star Wars fans might not want to hear that, but look at it from an outside point of view. Like, yeah, I love Star Wars. Yeah, I think she's partially responsible for Star Wars falling apart, but should she be fired and blacklisted from the entire company? I don't think so. She hasn't done anything that's that bad. Now, here's another thing that's going to add to my point there, is that I read another article today that said that Rian Johnson's trilogy is going to start in about 2 years. Now, if Bob Iger is going to get rid of Kathleen Kennedy but keep Rian Johnson on to do his trilogy, I question that decision, because even though Kathleen is certainly one of the ones that's being blamed for what's been going on about Star Wars with The Last Jedi, it was Rian Johnson's very polarizing story. Whether or not you like Last Jedi, it's very polarizing. It was that movie that really split the fandom. Kathleen authorized it, but it really was that film. So giving Rian Johnson his own trilogy without some kind of supervision from somebody who knows what they're talking about, whether it be a JJ or maybe somebody better. I don't even know if JJ is the best person for that job. Hell, maybe George Lucas isn't, or is. Who knows? I just don't think keeping him around and giving him his own trilogy is that good of an idea. But if his own trilogy is set in a different part of the galaxy and doesn't have any of the classic characters, I think fans are going to be more accepting towards it, because they don't have to worry about that movie ruining, Luke Skywalker, their childhood hero, because it's going to be about a different set of characters. So no matter what Rian Johnson does with his trilogy, if it's far away from the regular Star Wars films, I think people will be okay with it. I'm all right with him doing a movie. His writing is pretty piss poor, right? And of course, we know that he's probably going to direct the first one and maybe not the sequels. He's just going to write the outlines for him. So again, very preliminary. Now the thing is about this story is there was another story that came out where they talked about how Kathleen's the one who wanted out, and there was a big rumor that she might be leaving in September and that someone's going to replace her. That sounds a little bit more realistic. I remember there's been some YouTube channels that have been theorizing that Kathleen Kennedy is not that she's not fit for the job, but she doesn't want this job. In fact, here's the Grace Randolph video. And again, she's credible. I mean, she is very credible. But it's one of those things where I could see her like resigning, or I could see her maybe telling Iger, look, like, this is a lot of pressure for me. I'm not the right person for this. And then maybe what they might do is they might create this sort of angle, because you have to understand, folks, these corporations are very good at manipulating the public. They're very good at it. Trust me. They could create this angle where it appears on the surface that Iger fired her. She may have requested to be moved to a different part of the company. Iger may have fired her just so that the fans can kind of rally back on Disney and say, yeah, you got rid of her for us. You care about us. Because if she resigns, it's not going to be as impactful as her getting fired. So the story in the public might be that Bob Iger fires her, when in reality, she might just say, listen, pretend like you fired me. That way I can freaking, not really say much and kind of maybe play the victim a little bit to those who support me. And at the same time, the Star Wars fans can rally behind Disney again and say, okay, they are actually making decisions based on us. They're listening to us, which is also a very dangerous thing, because once you give the fans too much power, it's a bad thing. Granted, I did not like Last Jedi. I've said it a million times. I did not like that film. I think some fans are going a bit too far with this. I think, giving Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson and Kelly Marie Tran death threats and insulting them is not the right way to go about change. I think you speak with your wallet, and I think boycotting Solo may have been a good idea, even though it sucks because Solo was pretty good, and Ron Howard is a totally different kind of director than Rian Johnson. He's not going to go on Twitter talking shit to fans. He's going to just make his movies and be cool with it. And it really was a fun movie. So it's unfortunate that the sins of the father, in this case Rian Johnson, who's not older than Ron Howard, but he certainly did a Star Wars movie before Ron Howard, his sins have to, trickle down to Ron Howard, who didn't do anything wrong. Same thing with Lord and Miller. They started this whole thing. So again, when it comes to this termination of Kathleen Kennedy, I I don't think she's getting fired. I think she's going to get moved to a different part of the company. She could get removed as her job, which I guess is kind of like being fired. I see it more as a demotion. When I hear the word fired, it usually means they're going to be out of the company. I think she'll still be in the company. She'll still be in Hollywood. She'll still produce movies. But the question is she the problem? For all we know, because a lot of fans talk a lot of trash, I know what they're talking about. For all we know, Bob Iger might be the problem, or maybe Rian Johnson. It might not even be Kathleen. It might not even be her, but she is the one who's going to end up being the scapegoat no matter what. I look forward to hearing more about this and reading more about it. And I don't know, I always question these stories because usually it takes years before the truth gets out. So like in 10, 15, 20 years, we might actually get the real story about what's going on during this time. As of right now, though, these articles and what you hear, even from the company themselves, take it with a grain of salt because I don't trust any of them. Anyways, that's it. Talk to y'all soon.